Hello, everyone. It's 8 o'clock here in the Netherlands, so we're going to make a start. I see still a lot of rumor on apps and people not able to find it, so we will have some people who will look into that. But very welcome to you all. We will be in a total in a group of 25, 28 tonight, so it will be a very exciting evening. And it's already so great that you have found the female wave of change and you decided to join us tonight. So big welcome to all of you. A special night tonight, an online wave done with our keynote speaker, Claudia De Castro Caldeirinha. And I'm probably saying this terribly wrong, but she will pronounce it a lot better. Very much experience into female leadership, authority, power, and decision to lead. So we're very happy that she joined us tonight. She is, by the way, one of our international ambassadors. So really excited to have her on board. Just some for tonight. Each and everyone's microphones will be muted during the presentation. We will ask questions. Use the chat box as much as possible if you have any questions or to answer to the questions that will be asked. So find the chat box in the end we will have time to answer your questions, to discuss, to really connect, and to really to give Claudia a chance to respond to everything that you want to know from her. You can use your camera, so everyone is able to use it, and especially in the part in the end where we will discuss and ask questions and things like that. It will be so nice to see who we're talking to. So it's okay if you leave your camera by now, but please find your camera in the end so that we can really see you. That is so much more fun. The online wave will be recorded, so starting tomorrow it will be online. If you don't want your name on there, if you don't want your face on there, don't use your camera. Then no one will see that you joined us. Of course, we want you to really to show, to be excited that you joined us. So, but if there's any reason that you don't want your face on the internet and on the YouTube channel of the Female Wave of Change, please, don't use your camera. That's my best advice. So again, really big welcome to all of you. Right now, the Female Wave of Change, we only started the Female Wave of Change actually at the end is December 2016. So it's growing so fast. So we know that there's something happening that people are looking for. So this is really what was very important for us. Why we wanted that female wave of change, why we thought it was something that we needed extra in all these already so many organizations focusing on the feminine energy. I've been involved, I don't even know if I introduced myself. My name is Ingun Bol. I'm one of the founders of the Female Wave of Change. And actually, why we started this wave of change is because we saw so much happening in the world, and it is a world of change, of really rapid change, technology, environment, energy, environment, demographic. You can see there's so much happening right now, and all these changes will also influence the workforce. So we really strongly believe that the workforce and business, corporate environments, it needs a more feminine understanding and approach in creating those new opportunities. That was really why we wanted to start that female wave of change. Well, if you see what our mission statement is, we really want to celebrate that change. We want to embrace it by inspiring women worldwide to connect, to share their knowledge and experience, and to initiate a wave of new opportunities. And whether that is businesses or NGOs or all kinds of projects, that is, for us, that's okay, but we want to create it together. And already by now, you can see that there's already so many connections, even if, although we started not even 6 months ago, you know, we see that there are so many people from worldwide connecting to that female wave of change and to that and tapping into that female energy. So we're really excited about that. Well, Female Wave of Change has the ambition to grow the group of female change makers and leaders. And women who take responsibility to build the future of their families, their communities, and the world. And of course, their own future, a financial independent future. So for us, that is one of our main goals to achieve in the year to come. Our strategy, Female Wave of Change, offers women of all walks of life a global platform where awareness is created that women are responsible for their own future, and inspire to take action and make change happen together. And I do believe that there's a lot of organizations that it's all about inspiration, that it's all about motivation, but the thing that the fact that we wanted to really be different is inspire to take action. So create these new opportunities together. How? By connecting, building bridges, by sharing knowledge and experience, and by initiate those new opportunities. Well, for tonight, we invited Claudia to share a lot of her knowledge. We know she's in the final stage of writing her book about feminine leadership. She will talk about that, but very interesting. Well, you know, for now, Claudia, it's up to you. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. You will start sharing yours. Share your desktop. Activate your microphone. Great. Okay, the floor is yours. Activate your microphone. That's important right now.
Aha, now I think it's working. Can you hear me now?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, Ingun, and thank you for the invitation. It is a pleasure to be here. And just before asking who is out there, because it is very interesting for me, this is an experience that is taking me out of my comfort zone. As you well know, it's my first webinar. So I really have a lot of curiosity. Ingun is going to be helping in the process. So apologies in advance if there is a little IT issue. This is something that women traditionally do. They start by apologizing, right? So I know that Ingun wanted me to start by explaining a little bit of what I do. I'm a senior leadership advisor in general. I run a little consultancy company who has been providing leadership services to the European institutions, to NATO, to the UN, to governments. I also lecture and teach in 3 European universities on leadership streams of the executive programs. But I know she's mostly interested in making me talk about the work I do with powerful leaders and the people I have been working throughout my life that include Jenny Shipley. And I think today we have a participant from New Zealand. Is this correct? Ingun, you can just nod and tell me if it's correct, if we have our...
Yeah.
Thank you. So Jenny, like Mary Robinson, like Kim Campbell, all these women, these fantastic leaders, have been part of my career in some very fascinating men. And as you were saying, and I'm still having difficulties here. Yeah, okay. you were saying there is a book we have been writing, and it's not only my book, it's a book that I have been co-authoring with a great woman in town, which is Karina Horst, that you can see here in the final picture with me. And we have for 2 years been collecting the stories of women role models from different sectors, from the different power bubbles in town. We have been asking them what led them to where they are, what difficulties they found in their career, how difficult it was to access power positions, authority positions, what are their lessons learned, how can we all work together towards gender parity in decision making, and how do they see are the good practices and the lessons to be learned from their different sectors. So I will try to talk a bit about this during the presentation, but I do hope that we can have more like a conversation after this, after I finish here, so we can ask all the questions. And Ingun, you are touching areas that are fundamental. The technological revolution, the way the world is changing, what are the opportunities, what are the challenges, what are the setbacks that we can already observe and that we can anticipate for the next years are definitely at the heart of my worries and my questions. So here I go again in the difficult. Here it is. I like to consider myself, these women we've interviewed, and probably all of you in this webinar, as pioneers. We all think that only the suffragettes were pioneers in this process, but I do think that many of us, including men, and it's not only about women, we're creating a totally different world, and we are still pioneers because we're not yet there. Still, in our bubble of privilege in the Western Europe and in Western or democratic countries, we do have a sort of new normal in many realities. So I wanted to share with you just how the new normal is looking like here in the heart of the European institutions. Just a few days ago, this is a picture I stole with my iPhone from a window, and I found really cute. You know, this is a professional hub. You have people in very formal suits all over the place, and then you have Justus Lipsius is the European Council's headquarters, and then you will have this man feeding his baby, and it's just normal. So it's a new normal, which is still for a lot of people not that normal. And I also wanted to share something that I hoped would give you a taste of myself and my life and how I work. I have been recently doing my website, and like many women that I know, I have the chance of having a partner that supports me. So this is my partner who took several hours from his busy schedule to come around with me to take good pictures with the photographer and would carry everything. So this type of female-male partnership is happening. So this is good news. This makes me feel optimistic, and I wanted to share that. But despite this, we still have major gaps, and I think this is where we all want to work together, like in initiatives like the one Ingun was just explaining of Female Wave of Change. We have major gaps, and we can go back in detail to this. I don't know who the audience is exactly in terms of expertise, so I don't want to be nor too basic nor too advanced. Major gaps, and these have major consequences. Different pay, different careers opportunity, in some cases violence, poverty, and so on and so forth. And definitely one of the most difficult areas where we see these gaps is in access to decision making, access to authority positions, and to decide for what we think should be the way forward in our different contexts and organizations, which represents a massive waste of talent, because we know that just in the European Union now we have 60% of female graduates coming out of the universities, and they are enthusiastic, many of them are brilliant, talented, and then somehow in the pipeline they disappear. So this is something that Europe and the world today can no longer afford. We cannot be wasting 50% of talent, and that for me is one of the key elements in this struggle. Also, bias is still very much out there. It's our brain works like that. We put everything in folders, we look to associations, and we all have bias. I have bias, Any of us have bias, and that's where it gets so difficult to change mentalities and to educate people to a real equality. So I would like to ask at this stage, if you agree, Ingun, that we would ask our participants, what do they observe in their context in terms of bias and stereotypes?
Okay, it's good for everyone to, if you have any examples, please use the chat box.
Do you see frequently women serving coffee in meetings? Do you see frequently men interrupting women? These are the kind of things. Women being expected to be sexy, men being expected to be very competitive, and maybe sometimes they aren't. What are these typical gender-related attitudes, behaviors that you observe?
I don't know, can you hear me? I'm not sure.
Hi, Saskia, yes.
Oh, yes. Well, I was thinking, I think there's a distinction, but I wonder whether you agree, between equality and, we have a different word. In Holland, we have two words. We have gelijkheid, which is equality, and we have gelijkwaardigheid, which means that you're not equal, but you have the same value. And I was just wondering whether the things that you mentioned, the stereotypes, the behavior, that's more at the level of behavior. And at the more fundamental level, the question obviously is, to what extent are we of equal value? And when it comes to that question, I think then you see that the stereotypes that there are, they are probably fed by this idea that we also have a different value, that we are inferior or we are less. I don't know if that's the case, but that is what I have been thinking about lately.
So if I understand correctly, what you are saying is that having equal rights, equal opportunities, and equal value does not mean we are the same. We are all different. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. That the fact that we are different doesn't necessarily mean that we are unequal, but that the inequality is related to the value that we represent. And then the question is whether that value is also different. You would say yes, because of the stereotypes. It nearly implies that, yes, somehow the value attached to us as women is that we are less. But I would want to have a discussion about that, because I don't know.
Well, I think that's a very good question, and I think we can get into that in a bit more detail when we have the discussion time. Definitely, just to be very clear, when I talk of gender equality, I'm talking about equality of rights, equality of opportunities, equality of value, worth, capacity, and obviously not about being equal. I'm very different from other men, from men, but also from other women. I think each of us is very different. Culturally, we are different. In terms of personality, we're different. And I think we have multiple layers of identity, and gender is one strong one that has accumulated a lot of expectations through generations and centuries of defined roles, where there was this notion of worth, of value, and still today, unfortunately. But so for me, it's obviously different things. But we can get back to that in a moment. Were there any concrete examples, Ingun?
No, not yet. I think that will be in the discussion time.
Yeah, sure. Let's move on then. Let me go back to this PowerPoint. Okay. Because as I was just mentioning to Saskia, since we are inheriting all these centuries of social construction, of education, of patterns, of expected roles, of stereotypes, and stereotypes define not only what we are, but mostly what we should be, what we are expected to be. Like, a boy is not expected to be a good dancer, On the contrary, he will have a difficulty if he wants to assume himself as a dancer. Like a girl is not expected to be a boxer fighter, right? So stereotypes closes, and to me they're like prisons. It's really like a prison where you don't have the freedom to be who you are, and who you are is much bigger than if you are a girl or a boy. In terms of leadership, and to go back to power and authority, when we think, and this relates to what I was just saying, of this social construction over centuries and centuries, we do still have and still observe all around the think leader, think male bias. When people think of a cleaning person, they will associate in their minds very frequently with a woman. When they think of a leader, they normally think of a man. And that's not only a man, it's normally a certain type of man, which not all men nowadays actually feel represented by. So the alpha male who's very authoritarian, very charismatic, very outspoken, aggressive. This is what most people think, and studies and surveys have shown this extensively, is what they think when they are asked to think of what a leader looks like. So it is indeed in this context that I was saying that we are still pioneers, because we are changing mentalities, and we're changing what is normal and what should be normal and what's right. And that's why it takes so much time, and I want always to stress this, because I know sometimes people get frustrated. I get frustrated knowing that we still have 100 years for real equality, and that is not even considering that there's setbacks and that the path is not linear. So indeed, it's a long-term process. I remain optimist, but there's stuff that needs to be done very urgently. And the first one for me starts with ourselves. Each of us is checking our own bias. It has been proven over and over again that it's not only men that discriminate women. It's not only men who don't vote for women when they run for the presidency of the United States. It's not only men that will be putting barriers in their careers to the top. It's also women. So many women, in fact, a lot of women around us, including ourselves in many situations, we do have bias. So I will share this with you later. This is a website that is very, very good, developed by the Harvard University, where each of us, and it is an interesting experience, we can unveil a little bit of what type of stereotypes we hold. And it's not only about gender, it's race, sexual orientation, it's about religion, and so on and so forth. So this is my first advice. Now, if we get directly to the topic of authority and power, these two concepts are frequently used almost as synonyms. The nuance here is that while authority normally refers to a very formal type of position, of title, of control, of command, of domination, power is where the capacity, the faculty to influence to either the others or the events or the actions that are done around us happens. And this is where traditionally women have been very strong. They have been able to influence the men, and the men would lead the countries, and the men would lead the organizations. So this is why already Socrates was saying that why should we give more rights to women? They are already deciding, right, in the backstage. Mm-hmm. Right. But that's not enough. Today, more and more, we see how important it is to work with young women, with women at all ages, to help them to take the decision to lead. And to be a leader for me is not only about being the charismatic CEO or the president of a country. It's about leading change. And for me, I'm someone who believes in a value-driven leadership. It's about leading change in our communities, in our context, so that we can advance the values that we believe in. It's having a purpose and having a mission that is clear, and have an objective that we work towards every day, and that will fulfill our mission along the process. So one thing that I cannot share yet all the outcomes, not all at all, of the book, because we'll have the launch in September. So a little marketing, you're all welcome to come to Brussels for the launch. But one thing that it's very obvious, it was already empirically clear to me, but with these women, we have been really coming to the conclusion that there's not one way women lead. And that's another stereotype that sometimes we fall in, and including ourselves, women, in these areas of work, is that we want to sort of make, okay, women lead differently. Yes, we are all caring, we're all nice, we're all team-oriented. Yes, many of us are. I am. You are. But not all women are like that, and they shouldn't not be obliged to be like that. So what is very fascinating in our in the different stories is that sometimes women really had to struggle against this double bias by other women themselves, that where they were not considered to be feminine enough, or not to be caring enough, or team related enough. And I think that we're actually putting much higher and more demanding standards to women than we are to men, because men don't have the monopoly of being bad leaders, of being autocratic, of being incompetent. I mean, there's a lot of bad women leaders and incompetent. They're only still, the proportion is lesser, so the sample is lesser, right? I do believe that there's no black and white picture here. So I would like to conclude very soon. And then I have a lot of other slides that we can discuss about challenges and specific mistakes that women tend to do, and what is required for change to happen. But if there's one thing that Danuta Hubner, who's one of our interviewees, she's the former commissioner who brought Poland into the European Union, and now she's a member of the European Parliament. She's a very senior lady, and she says that now is the time to make a real revolution. Women should stop leading from behind. Now it's the moment to lead up in front. And this, of course, requires a lot of things to happen: assertiveness, courage, the capacity to put the foot on the door and to knock on closed doors, and the capacity also to be authentic, not copying the man. We don't want to be men. We don't want to be like other women who have been successful. I don't want to be like Margaret Thatcher or Angela Merkel. So how can we be authentic leaders, like I would like men to become authentic leaders themselves, and lead with a sense of purpose, consistent with my values, with my heart in it, not too much, not too little. What is the self-discipline that I need to develop every day of my life, so that I can access my objectives for myself and for my community? And of course, how do I get all the others? Because we cannot get there alone. It's about creating the relationships, and we're seeing in this new VUCA world, volatile, unpredictable, complex, ambiguous, the acronym that is very sexy nowadays, how in today's world, the capacity to create networks, relationships is more important than ever. And the agile organizations and structures that are able to cope and advance the changes that we are living through are those that are more less pyramid, more horizontal, and more based on strong relationships. And this is where we women can traditionally position ourselves very well, because with all these centuries of traditional female characteristics and traditional male characteristics, we were all socially constructed to be very good in building relationships, or most of us are. So we have emotional intelligence. We have all these things that we have been asked to develop over the centuries. So now is the right moment to use them, because the context is finally opening up an opportunity window where these kind of qualities are finally have the recognition they deserve, right? Finally, what I would like to say we have been observing in looking at women leaders who manage to access not only power, but to have authority, has to do with the capacity of having an iron fist in a velvet glove, which means being able to be at the same time warm and at the same time assertive. And this is, of course, a whole program, right? And it's also about being able not so much to express dominance with words, because studies and research show that, and empirically I have seen it, that when you speak too aggressively, when you ask too much, the reaction is frequently very defensive by the system itself that likes things to remain the same. But when dominance is expressed by nonverbal, and this is about the posture, this is about how people react to each other, it's about self-control and self-regulations as well. So this is a whole debate we can have in the conversation now. Women manage to get through the obstacles that they still have to face in a much more effective manner. So this for me would be a top tip. And finally, and this is really the last slide, I think that we are today, both as women and as men, in a moment where we need to redefine what success is, and to redefine it in our own terms, relating it to our values and sense of mission and purpose and heart and all the things I've mentioned before. Because more than ever, in our Western societies, we're seeing a trend, especially in the younger generations, that it's not enough to be in a power position, in an authority position. It's not enough to have a big salary and a big house and financial comfort. I want to be happy, and I want to be part of my children growing up. And this is not only for women, it's for men as well. So I think it's really the moment we need, all of us, to think what happiness is. So this is where I would leave it. And I'm very happy now we would have a conversation about these different issues.
Okay, Claudia, thank you. There's already people responding in the chat box, so that's good. While you stop sharing your screen, because then we can see all the pictures if people want to share their cameras.
Good.
I've my first question so that everyone can get used to seeing all these faces. Of course, you're not going to share a lot about, and not everything about, the book that you have been written. But if you could pick one, if you could pick one of the women you have been interviewing for your book, what is so special about that woman that will really make her contribute to, the next 10 years in the way that she leads, that she, that.
Well, you're asking me something really difficult, which is to choose, right? Choosing is always leaving the other side. And I really think they are all impressive. And I will not commit and compromise here publicly saying the ones I favored. What I can do is to share a few of the things from the different stories that have really touched me in relation to your question. We have Margot Wallström, the Foreign Affairs Minister of Sweden. This woman is incredible. She has grown up with Olof Palme. He was sort of her mentor. She was politically active since she's 16. And she has been the first person to be able to come to Brussels, which is a very traditional context, power context, very male still. And she was able to start bringing something very new over the last few years, which is a feminist foreign policy. And to gradually, and while it's still, of course, in its early steps, but what she's doing is for instance, in the negotiations with Syria, you can only have negotiations. Her point is that you should not have negotiations without women at the table. I have an echo.
I found it.
Okay. We have two of our interviewees, at least, who came from very difficult contexts in revolutions. One came from the Iranian Revolution, the other escaped from the Ceausescu's regime as a political refugee. These are all very dramatic stories, and they have touched me in the way that these women are survivors, and they have naturally got to where they are because they very early in their lives, they had to prove that they were resistant, that they were resilient, that they were able to use all the drama to actually build up their own capacity and to emerge from that, and to not allow others, including not other men, to actually quiet them and to have their space in this decision-making positions where they both are now. I'm not sure if I'm replying to your question. I resist choosing one, basically.
That's good, you know. So anyone else? I don't know if Saskia, if you feel that what you have been asking before, if that has been approached. If you want to, if you have an extra question or someone else, it's your time now.
Well, this question about what we are worth as human beings in general, so not necessarily only related to gender. For me, it has to do with my work with refugees. So I train refugees for the Dutch Refugee Council, and the training is centered around core values that we uphold in Europe, basically. And one of them is equality, and equality in terms of the fact that everybody has the same value, and that we don't discriminate on the basis of gender, ethnicity, or religion. But if I look at how the world is evolving, and then I see that there is a huge inequality. And the question for me then is what is the role of women in this respect? So if we take that as a starting point, what is the specific female aspect, which is not necessarily gender related, because also men can have these female qualities. What is this female aspect that could create change in the world? So that we detach it, so to speak, from gender, because when you get into these discussions about gender, ethnicity, or religion, people always start to fight. But that you do talk about the female qualities which are important in this world.
Mm-hmm. Claudia, or maybe someone else?
I can react unless someone else wants to react.
You start.
I resist, and this is something I have been growing over the last few years, using female or feminine qualities versus men or masculine qualities. And one of the reasons is because I think these are also limiting. I don't think there's one way women are, and I don't think there's one way men are. I really like to see the diversity of each person in itself, as a unique amount, accumulation of multiple layers of identity, our background, and so on and so forth. What I do think that is very important today, and especially in the context where we are living, is that we use those traditionally assumed characteristics of men and women, the best of them, and we develop them both in women and in men. Just to give you a very concrete example, I have a boy. I have a 12 years boy, and he knows about gender stereotypes since he was able to start reading. Even did free training for the school and so on and so forth. Why? Because I really felt that this generation and all the others, but we need to start somewhere now, deserves to be free to be who they are, and free to be with how they are in terms of their aspirations. If a boy wants to go to a drama school, if he wants to wear pink, it's fine. Like if a girl wants to go to boxing, it should be fine too. Within, for me, and that's my personal view, for me, it's value driven. So how do we do, and I think, Saskia, this is your point, how can we take the best of these qualities that have been transmitted through these generations and generations of social construction to make positive change in this very difficult world that we are living in, right? And if I had the reply to that question, I think that's really the $1 billion question, isn't it? I think in that sense, I am very personally committed to the principles of the Dalai Lama when he says that when you want to do peace in the world, you start with yourself and then gradually start changing things in your micro level. And this is one of the reasons why I personally redefined success in my life in a different way. When I was with this organization, with the Club of Madrid and so on and so forth, I was all the time, my ego was being flattered. We were discussing macro changes in the world, but very frequently when I would look at the mirror and I would ask myself, is it really making a change? And then I wouldn't believe it. And then I decided, where can I make a change? So this is why I say that change always starts with us. And how can I make a change? I think that, yes, collectively, we can make big change. Individually, we can make a lot of change too, if we start in our communities and we start pushing for the values we believe: freedom, respect, tolerance, all those values that are violently under siege today.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Claudia. I know that Bonnie, you have raised your hand, so I think you want to contribute.
Yeah, if I may, yes. Thank you, Claudia. I am just so aligned with what you're saying. It's like music to my soul. First of all, I think you're giving some wonderful answers. One, and they may seem simple, but one, it starts with me, no matter what it is. And I think that's so valuable because one thing that is missing is role models for girls, role models for women, even of our ages. And it's up to us to become those role models. And I think you are just, I believe that we are going to positively transform the world, being value driven, by not trying to fit into what I refer to as the male box, M-A-L-E box, or the female box. It's exactly as you said, it is learning to be one's authentic self and putting our values and our experience, our relationships and forward with our values. And I wanted to come back to, Saskia was bringing up some really important, I think, aspects too. And when it comes to the value, I think there's also something to be said about the value that we as women also give to women. And until we value ourselves, how can we expect the others to? And I'd like to just share something that I heard on International Women's Day, when a woman closed the panel by saying, "We will know that we have succeeded when my daughter comes down dressed as Batman and my son comes down dressed as Wonder Woman, and I don't think a thing of it." And I think the visual behind that is so powerful, because it is that value that brings the parity that we're looking for. So thank you both for all you've been saying.
Thank you, Bonnie. And You know, it is great to have this sharing. And one thing that my experience, and I'm talking and I'm listening to myself and I'm thinking, okay, what I'm going to say might actually be very biased. But it is true that when women get together in exchanging, in networks, there's something different that happens than what happens when there's mixed environments. And I think both are very needed. And I'm a total defender that we need to make a societal change with women and men, the good ones, bringing all the others. And it's really like that. But it is true that for whatever reason, social, etc., it is something very specific, very feminine still. The capacity of intimacy and profound sharing and emotional connections that happen when women get together. And I think this is a skill that we have refined over so many generations that it has almost passed in our blood nowadays. And when I see this notion of the role models, I think that is fundamental, and it is the reason why we decided to write this book. Because we realized that there were in Europe, there were two major causes for young women not to either go for a career, even if they were highly educated, or just to stop at the beginning, early ages of their career. One was stereotypes and harassment, structural, systemic barriers. And the other one was very simply the absence of visible role models. So I fully agree with what you are saying, and it is about each of us becoming a role model, and it is about making other women around us role models and making them visible. So it is, at the end of the day, it's about creating this collective visibility. You know, we have been in the women leadership literature, we have been reading American books for ages, which are very important. It's good to know about the role models in the US, but just here in Brussels, one city, there's just zillions of fantastic women that are either leading with authority, so in top positions, and it matters because they can make more change in the sense that they can access and take decisions that will have an institutional impact. So many of these women are doing great changes, like Kristalina Georgieva, that was imposing the 40% quota for the European Commission. But it's much more than that. And at the end of the day, what you were saying is reminds me. I have this in my room actually. I have this quote by Maya Angelou. You know, this poet, American. And there's a quote I have there, which is, "I want to be remembered as a successful woman who has something like generously and intelligently led the change by being what she is." Something like that. So it is at the end of the day, I think it starts in us, and it starts also in those around us, and making them value. Like, one thing that I would really like to share, I don't know if we have a man with us today. We were supposed to have a man. Ingun, do you see any Louise there?
He was, but
I left.
Just a couple of minutes ago, he left, yes.
Ah, la, la.
This was too strong for him, I think.
But I would have loved to have him on board, because I was going to talk about the men like Louise, who are like my partner, and so many men I deal with every day who are actually trying to be role models for a different way of being a man, which is much more in this logic of merging what's the best from the two energies in a way. So these are caring men. These are men who want to be present for their family, for their children. These are the men who support their women in their career, and that we work as a team. And one thing that I can share from the book, and it's really, for me, it's one of the most interesting conclusions I got from this book, is that all the women who have managed to a certain career position there are only 3 who don't have a partner. From all the others, the women who have reached to a career, a top career, they all had the support of their male partners, and they actually say it's the biggest business decision they had to do in their entire life, to have the right partner. And I do think this is so true. So true. When people work like teams, both have the freedom to be who they are, right? So a very interesting observation we have done, not only with interviewees, but then discussing these issues with many other women and men, is that we also realize that these are the marriages or the relationships that they're actually last a long time. So I still don't have an academic hypothesis. I'm not going to jump into conclusions too fast. But I have seen at least 3 or 4 dozens of cases where, in the case men and women both had the space and the freedom to be who they were and acted as a partnership, the relationship has lasted very long, and we're talking of 30 years more of relationship in some cases. So, you know, I'm looking forward for someone to do this research in the future, because I do think there's some basis there to dig for data.
Well, I think I'm an example of one of these relationships for 35 years. I think Bonnie as well. And yeah, one more. Okay, I'm going to Elaine. She said she wants to make a comment on being role models. Sure. Elaine, you have to turn on your, wait, let me, yes, you can speak now.
Oh, okay, hold on. So I wanted to say I'm living in the United States. I'm in right outside of the St. Louis area, which is Missouri, but I actually live in Illinois. And I am an African-American woman who finds the messaging on role models to be very challenging. And one of the things in America, as you all may be quite aware, is the emphasis that is being placed right now on bringing women into the higher echelon. I used to work for Wells Fargo Advisors. I recently retired, and there was a certain level that women could seem to get to, but could not get through that glass ceiling, if you will, where they were able to have the same position as some of the men. So a lot of times, the way the attitude that was being passed down, and I believe they were being authentic in who they think they are, that it was very difficult to understand that the candidates that they had always led to the choice of somebody who looks like them, who thought like them, who behaved like them, because that's a more comfortable place to be. And one of the things that we try to emphasize is being able to have the difficult conversations, coming outside of the box of dealing with somebody who is not like you. And as a role model, we found we used to go into some of the schools and we would take from an ethnicity background, different ethnic backgrounds, because we wanted the children to know it's not all, especially here in America, all white male. We took in and made sure that all of us were seen together, that there was not one specific focus on the male gender and especially on the white male gender. So I think the idea of establishing role models should be done as groups of people that represent a diverse background, letting those know that this is not for one ethnic background, it's not for one gender background, but we are collectively trying to bring about that equality. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. Yeah.
That's very interesting.
It's very interesting. I talked to one of the founders of Ladies of Color yesterday, and it was some of the same issues. It was not like, you know, it was not about male or female. But it was so many other things that that are important there. Yeah.
Can
Did
I
you want
say
to
something,
respond?
Elaine?
I'm sorry.
Can I say something?
Yes, of course.
No, because I was looking at time. I know at some stage we'll have to
Yes.
wrap up. Elaine, thank you so much. It is really a fantastic testimonial, and it is a bit what I was trying to say before on how it's not just about gender. We have all these multiple layers of identity, and the more different each layer is, different from us, and the dominant is, the dominant reference is white male, right? The more layers of diversity there is, the biggest the challenge and the biggest the handicap. So if I, as a white woman, I'll have more difficulties than a white man. If I am an African woman, or if I am a Muslim veiled woman, or if I am a woman with whatever type of difference in disability, religion, or whatever, these multiple layers accumulate and make access to power much more difficult, and to authority and to decision making. And it is true that I work a lot with American academics and practitioners. And we are putting together a dialogue, a women leadership transatlantic dialogue that will happen in October here in Brussels this year.
Oh.
And it is precisely one of the experts that will come, and it's part of the organizational committee. She's also writing a lot on diversity and inclusion from the perspective of African American women, and how the different policies that have been put in place over the last few decades have been giving very different and mixed results, and how much there is a need still for all sorts of measures, including making role models more visible. And clearly there, Michelle Obama is becoming, right? Everybody loves her. We love her, right?
You know, it's interesting that you talk about that from the diversity and inclusion perspective. That has been a real focus point at my previous employer, because one of the leaders made the comment that he took a risk in putting an African American female in a certain position. And he was immediately challenged and said, "Why do you call that a risk? That was a qualified individual that happened to be African American and female." And it was absolutely astounding that it appeared that that's not someone who could possibly fulfill the role until proven. And I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, unfortunately, I get that type of comment all the time, including, you know, "Oh, you know, we're so great. We have ticked the box of diversity and inclusion. All right, we have a woman, and on the top of on the top of things, she's from a different ethnicity. 2 boxes, fantastic. If she has an handicap, oh my God,
that's
then
even better.
all 3 boxes. No. It's very tough, because there's this predominant model of think male. So a woman is a risk. A non-white woman is a bigger risk. A non-white, non-Catholic woman is triply a risk, and it just adds on and adds on and adds on. Unfortunately, we are still right there, and I do like to use a metaphor when I teach, or when I advise on this diversity and including strategies. This cannot be just a ticking box process. Diversity cannot be the flavor of the month. It is a long-term process that needs to be based on research, on data, on strategy, on long-term commitment, and with a purpose of changing the mentalities and changing the system. Because without a change in the system, we cannot be truly equal in terms of the opportunities and the access. And I like to use the metaphor of the elephant and the giraffe. We have been building for centuries of white male domination a pattern of a house that has been constructed for that person, right? For that profile. So if we call the giraffe, the white male, the giraffe, we have built a house for a giraffe over the centuries and the centuries and the centuries and the centuries. Our societies and organizations are made by the giraffe for the giraffe. And then there's all these different animals that try to fit in. And for decades now, we try to squeeze in. That's why we have women trying to adapt to models of being a leader that are nothing but men with skirts, right? So the new animal tried to fit in a house that was prepared for the giraffe. And what needs to happen is that the systems need to change by concrete actions that will allow the house not only to be good for the giraffe, but also for the other animals, so that everybody has a place in it. And there's a fantastic book that I would really advise to all of you. It became actually I have it here, became my Bible. Probably you know this. It's by Iris Bonet, and it's What Works, Gender Equality by Design. And she basically starts saying that, okay, we have identified that bias and stereotypes was the big chunk that we could not overcome, and that was risking, it was transforming into a failure many of the efforts towards inclusion and diversity. But bias, the bad news is that the bias will not change. I mean, the brain works like that, and there's only so much you can do to change that. What needs to change is the system and the structure. And so she gives a lot of practical suggestions that can actually increase or decrease bias by very simple measures. So there's this very interesting example when in the 70s, the New York Metropolitan Orchestra had a big majority of male musicians. And of course, none of the people in the jury thought they were biased. No, we want more women, and of course we want other ethnicities, and we want diversity, of course. Until they've decided, all with very good intentions, until they have decided to impose a very simple wall, not a wall, a barrier, a thin barrier. So basically this blinded the jury from the musician that was coming to the interview, the cast. And so what happened is that finally the juries would only focus on the music, i.e. the talent, the skill, right? And that led to an increase, a major increase. I think it was from 17% of women in the orchestra to something like 52% of women. And despite this, of course, the jury thought that they were not being biased at any stage. So yes,
that's very, very interesting, and it's we've got a road to go, but I really truly enjoyed the presentation and the discussion of everything that was spoken. Thank you very much.
Yay, thank you, Eliane. Be in touch then.
Well, thank you, ladies. I know there is more questions and people want to respond. I want to give one person a short chance. Katerina, you really asked to respond to one of the, and it has to be short now because we're running out of the it's longer than the hour, and we try to be very strict about it. But please, Katerina.
Thank you very much. I'm Katerina. Here is my son Adam, also listening in. Claudia, thank you for this talk. I have a question, maybe that's also for us to think about, because I've been intrigued. It's the relationship of women and power, and to what extent it's different. It's different from the perceptions and relationship of men to power. and whether maybe there is also, we could find some keys or some hints for understanding how we can advance better women into leadership, and also the men understanding that women leadership, female leadership, is not a threat to them.
Dear Katka, your great questions would lead us to a very long discussion. You have to know that Katka, she is one of my alumni, and she's from the European Commission, and she's one of the talents that has been developing over the last few years. And she's a fantastic young woman, a young leader, leading by example, coming from the Czech Republic, and doing a lot of political change. And these little 3 boys, she has have been participating in conferences and events on women leadership. So, you know, she's really my hope, like many other girls and women out there. Your question is a very tough one, and we don't have time to go in depth into that. So if I understand correctly, there's 2 parts of that question. One is how women and men deal with power, and the other is more prescriptive. It's what can we do? Well, actually you have 3 parts. The second is what can we do to change that? And the third is actually how can we have men not to perceive women career progression as a threat, right? So it's actually 3 questions. Can we decide to pick one and we follow up the other in the next webinar or something? Because otherwise we'll be here for a long time. Which one do you prefer?
Yeah, the first, Claudia, then, because we can start with that and then we can think ourselves. It can lead us further.
Okay. Well, survey shows that indeed there are certain patterns, and of course these patterns don't mean that everybody's like that, but they show a certain pattern, either for socialization or whatever reasons we have mentioned already. There is a survey show that yes, men tend to be more competitive than women. So it is true that the whole attitude that goes in relation to access to authority and career development will be very much marked by competition. And that's actually interesting, because all the women we've interviewed start saying that no, there's no differences in the relation to power. And then later on they will say, well, but men are more competitive than women. So indeed, it's not only a perception, but also there's research backing up this, which makes very frequently, leads very frequently to men being more loud. And there's also survey on how women tend to put themselves, lead from the back, and put themselves in the position of number 2. They can influence the one who's in front, who's normally the number 1, who's a man. They prepare the work, and men will take the credit. And when the media come, only the name of the man appears. This is inclusively, there's a lot of interesting research on, for instance, in the academic world, if there are 3 authors or 2 authors for a book, it's the male who gets the first, and the others will just be mentioned at all, you know, and all. So the male gets the predominant. And what is interesting as a pattern is that a survey shows that women tend to agree that men are the ones who should be first. And that's again where we have the result of these centuries of mind setting and formatting, you know. Another very, you know, this goes back to traditional mistakes as well that women tend to do. Women tend to be much more in a position of asking permission to take a role, to take a project, while men will go for it, right? And they just run with the ball, they show results, and they show proactiveness, and then they are more visible. Women, the women we have interviewed, all of them have this pattern. They all stopped at some stage in their evolution. They stopped asking permission. They just started doing what they thought it was right. So for me, this is a key moment of change, when you decide to lead and when you decide to look at power in another way. Then there's also the fact that many women, but also many men, this is not only about women, think of power as something bad. They tend to excuse themselves. Oh, power, no, it's like as if power would mean being authoritarian and in a way aggressive. So they're very much afraid of being perceived as aggressive and authoritarian. So they tend to say, oh, no, well, I want to make changes, but I don't want to go too much into the competition. I don't want to lower the type of attitudes I want to have. And for instance, in politics, what we see is that the women who have persisted in their careers in politics over the long run, they had to not only be ready to fight in a jungle, but also stop caring for what others think of them. And this is something that women and men are very different. And again, there's a social construction. Women are still, and most of them, and we still see that with our kids, girls are taught to be obedient and nice, and this social condition starts even as babies. There's research that shows that people, parents, even the most feminist parents, will talk differently to a baby boy who cries than to a baby girl who cries. Mm-hmm. So this is as early as it goes. That's why I all the time I return to bias and stereotypes and awareness. So many networking. While men naturally for decades and decades do networking, and their networks are professional networks, women tend to either have social networks and consider that networking professionally is sort of a waste of time, or it's about showing off, and they feel much more comfortable. And there's interesting research as well that shows a huge challenge for us women. We sell other people, especially other white male, much better than we sell other women and ourselves. There was this survey by the Oxford University, if I'm not wrong, I think it was the Oxford University, that has made a survey on women. How much would they pay themselves? And the result was, and how much men would pay to these women in a certain decision-making position. Women, the figures that women have advanced in average were 70% less than those that were advanced by men, which means that even if men think that women are less worth than they are, women think of themselves that they are even less worth. You see? So how can we change this, right? That was the other question. I think that for women, especially, that's why I don't, and bringing men, I think there's the work we can do, and go back to what can we do in our micro level. I teach, I share, I make as much visible as possible the consequences of all these lenses that we have, all these gender lenses. And I work both with men and with women. I do think that men, and I invite you to check a website, an American man who started 30 years ago with a project called White Male has the diversity full partners. His name is Bill Proudman. You can just Google. And he has shown, and I agree, it's also my perception, that there is, it's not a monolithic box of white male or of male in general, right? So there's a group in the male that I don't even waste my time with. The alpha male, the Trump disciples, the Putin disciples, the yes, let's be arrogant, that I'm not spending more time with them. I think they will need generational changes, and I hope things will move on. Then we have those men who are already our allies, my partner, your partner, Bill Proudman, all these men that are pushing forward, you know, the directors in the commission that despite the fact that they know that their career progression is going to be endangered, they are still pushing for more women to go up. We need to make these men more valued. We need to make them more visible so that they can also be better role models for the other men around. We need to value when men take paternity leave, or when men leave at 5 to go and pick up their children, or when they support their women. We need to value them, and we need to show this to the others, because the big chunk in the middle are the men that are somehow, in terms of values, especially in our Western world, in terms of values, they somehow think it's right that we have the same opportunities. And then it's when they feel the threat that things get really shaky, right? So one thing I do in the commission, a reality that you know, Katka, is that we need to reassure men that also they have an opportunity now to redefine success. That in this change, they don't lose. Gender parity is not about men losing. It's about all of us winning. And this is not just blah, blah, because more and more men and the younger generations are very, very different from the older ones. Men want to be present as fathers. They don't want to spend all their lives in the office like their predecessors, not most of them. So how can they have a balance, a work-life balance for all, men and women? The privileges we are asking for women can also benefit men. And also the responsibility of being the sole provider or being the main provider, that creates huge amounts of stress and stress-related diseases. So men need to start understanding facts and figures. So we always need to show them facts and figures. And then to start to show them where the privilege for all us is by going into towards a bigger parity in our roles and our responsibilities. In a nutshell. This could continue for hours, my dear.
Well, I think this was a very, well, it was a great, I think it was a good answer. Katrina, do you think so? Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much. And also thank you very much for taking my question, although it was already almost the time.
Well, and I know there's so many others here, and I know that there's more women here in this call. Well, this morning I had a meeting with Herma. She's here, and with Marlies and Herma. And Herma comes from a corporate environment, and she, that's really different from what we're experiencing as being entrepreneurs. So there's so many more questions and so many more challenges to face. So it's really nice. Claudia, I really want to thank you for tonight and being our guest speaker, and really very interesting what you've shared with us. And I think, at least I'm very looking forward to your book. So maybe September 19th, that it will be available at our big global kickoff event in the Netherlands. There have been some women. Claudia, you will join us September 19th at our leaderships panel together with Bonnie, and Saskia's there. There's more women there. There's Sally from New Zealand that will be also in the panel. So there will be more online waves. So please be there next time. Invite your friends. June 8th will be the next, and we are preparing right now this big event on September 19th, and we hope to see there a lot of women and discuss a lot, not just on what the situation is right now, but especially also from what can we create into the future, what is very important. So thank you all for being here. Hope to see you soon, and thank you, Claudia.
Thank you, Ingun, and thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.